It was a typical morning in our house, one of those early spring days where the air felt cool, but not quite cold, and the sun was just beginning to stream through the kitchen window. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting smell I had known my whole life. I had been up early, as usual, trying to finish a project for work. The quiet hum of the morning was interrupted only by the occasional sound of birds outside and the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to live in a household with three people bustling around, each with their own routines and quirks. My brother, Sam, had been away for almost 3 years, first for college, then for a job overseas, and for a long time, it had just been me and my parents. Despite the absence of his boisterous energy, things had settled into a rhythm that was peaceful in its own way. Of course, it was never the same as when Sam was home. The laughter, the teasing, the arguments over the TV remote, it all seemed to have disappeared, replaced by the quiet hum of daily life. That morning, though, things were about to change. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw that it was a text from my mom. She'd been in touch more frequently these past few weeks, probably because Sam's return home was imminent. I couldn't remember the last time he had been home for a long visit, and the news that he was coming back had sent my parents into a frenzy of excitement. I tapped open the message and immediately smiled. "Sam's coming home tonight," it read. "We're having a big party at the house to celebrate. Don't forget to come over around 7 p.m. Everyone will be there. Love you." The excitement was palpable even through the text. It wasn't the first time my mom had mentioned Sam's return, but this was the first time she had mentioned a party. A party to celebrate him coming back. My heart lifted at the thought of it. It had been so long since our family had been together under one roof, laughing, catching up, telling stories like we used to. I could already picture Sam walking through the door, his familiar grin plastered across his face, his arms open wide to greet everyone. I began to think about what I should wear. I hadn't had the chance to get dressed up in a while, but this seemed like the perfect occasion. A small reunion, a big moment. I was ready to see Sam, to reconnect with him, to relive some of the old memories we shared. But then, as I stared at the text again, something caught my eye. It wasn't what was said, but rather what wasn't. My name wasn't mentioned. In fact, it almost seemed as if the invitation wasn't quite for me at all. It was as if it was assumed that I would be there, but there was no direct invitation. No "can't wait to see you there," or "we're so excited you'll be joining us." Just a casual mention of the time and place. I felt a brief moment of unease. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe it was just the way my mom wrote the text. But something about it fell off. As I mulled over it, my mind began to spiral. What if I wasn't supposed to be invited? What if this wasn't really a family celebration, but rather something else? Maybe Sam had a different idea of what he wanted his homecoming to be. Maybe I wasn't included. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone, feeling an odd tightness in my chest. I wasn't usually the type to jump to conclusions, but something about this text seemed to suggest I wasn't the focus of the evening. Maybe I was overreacting, but it was hard to shake the feeling that there was something going on beneath the surface. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself that everything was fine. After all, it had been 3 years since Sam had left for college, and in that time, I had changed too. Maybe our relationships had shifted. Maybe Sam had outgrown me, or had new friends now, people he felt closer to. I had no reason to think that, but I couldn't shake the nagging thought that I wasn't as important to him anymore. I looked at the clock. It was still early, and there was plenty of time before the party. I needed answers, so I decided to call my dad. He would know what was going on. I had always felt closer to my dad in some ways. He was the steady one, the one who always had a calm, level-headed perspective. If anyone could explain this strange feeling I had, it would be him. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. It rang a couple of times before he picked up, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" he asked. "Dad, I just got the text about Sam's party tonight." I began, trying to sound casual. But I noticed something. It didn't really say I was invited, or maybe I'm just overthinking it. I don't know. I just feel like maybe I'm not supposed to be there. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear my dad take a breath before he spoke. "It's just a reunion," he said, his tone calm, but a bit distant, as though he was trying to ease me into the idea. Sam wanted it to be a small gathering, just his friends from college. It's not that he doesn't want you there. He's just looking to reconnect with the people he hasn't seen in a while. You know how it is when you're away for a long time, right? I felt a sharp pang of disappointment. I had been hoping for something different, some explanation that would make me feel like I was still a part of it. But instead, my dad's words felt like a dismissal of what I had expected. Just his friends from college wasn't exactly an invitation to the family event I had imagined. I had thought that Sam coming home would mean we would all celebrate together, just like old times. Instead, it seemed like he was keeping us at arm's length, and that was a difficult pill to swallow. I swallowed hard, trying to hide the frustration that had suddenly risen within me. "So, I'm not invited?" I asked, my voice more vulnerable than I meant it to be. Dad sighed. "It's not that. It's just, Sam wants a small group. He's been through a lot these past few years, and he's looking to reconnect with people who were really close to him during college. He's not thinking about it the way you are. It's not personal. It's just a reunion, nothing more." I tried to make sense of his words, but they only made me feel more isolated. How could Sam not want his family there? How could he not want me there? Sure, I understood that college friends were important, but didn't I deserve to be part of his return home too? I could hear the clink of coffee cups in the background as my dad continued, oblivious to the rising discomfort in my chest. "You'll see him soon enough. Maybe you can catch up later in the week. Don't take it too hard, okay?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay, Dad," I said, my voice flat. "I get it. Thanks." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, staring at the phone in my hands. The weight of the conversation lingered, pressing against my chest like a heavy stone. Sam's return home was supposed to be a joyful event, a reunion of sorts. But instead, it felt like something had shifted, and I was no longer part of the picture. The thought stung more than I cared to admit. As the day wore on, I found myself drifting in and out of my thoughts, unable to shake the feeling that things between me and Sam had changed in a way I wasn't ready for. I didn't know what had happened in those 3 years, but the distance between us seemed wider than ever. I had never considered that Sam might want to leave me out of something like this. It wasn't something I was prepared to deal with. By the time the evening arrived, I was still undecided about whether I would go to the party or not. My parents were busy with the preparations, but I felt like I was watching everything from a distance, not really a part of it. It was supposed to be a celebration, but it felt like a reminder of how far we had all drifted apart. As I stood by the window, watching the last bit of daylight fade, I realized I didn't have the answers I was looking for. And maybe, just maybe, I had to accept that not everything was going to be the way I imagined it. Things had changed, and so had I. Sam wasn't the only one who had moved on. I needed to face that fact, even if it hurt. The night was drawing closer, and the anticipation of Sam's return home hung heavy in the air. I found myself pacing around the house, my mind still unsettled by the conversation with my dad. It wasn't like me to overthink things, but I couldn't help but feel like I'd been left out of something important. The way my dad had brushed it off, labeling the party as just a reunion with Sam's friends, didn't sit right with me. I'd always thought that family would come first, that reunions like these were meant to be shared with those who mattered most. But clearly, I was mistaken. I couldn't focus on anything. The mundane tasks of the evening, setting the table, putting away dishes, making sure the house was in order, seemed meaningless. The thought of Sam being home again filled me with equal parts excitement and anxiety. I hadn't seen him in years, and I wasn't sure how to feel about the fact that he was now coming back into my life under these circumstances. The silence of the house felt suffocating. My parents were in the kitchen, preparing for the party. I could hear their voices, muffled by the walls, as they chatted about the final details. My dad was no doubt making sure everything was perfect. He always did, even when it was just the 4 of us at a family dinner. But today it felt different. There was something tense in the air that I couldn't ignore. I decided I needed to talk to my dad again. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew that if I didn't get some clarity, I would be stuck in this anxious limbo all night. I grabbed my phone and sent him a quick text, asking if we could talk for a minute. Within a few seconds, he called me back. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice warm, but there was a hint of something I couldn't place. Was it guilt? Or maybe he was just distracted by the preparations? Either way, I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. Dad, I started. Try to keep my tone steady. I've been thinking about what you said earlier about the party. I don't get it. You said it was just a reunion, but it feels like there's more to it. Why didn't Sam invite me? Why didn't he even mention me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The silence stretched out, and I could feel the tension building. Finally, my dad sighed, and I could almost hear the weariness in his voice. Look, I know this is hard for you, but you have to understand that Sam's been through a lot, he began. He's been away for so long, and he's trying to reconnect with the people who were closest to him during that time. It's not about excluding you. It's just that, well, he's been focused on his life out there, and he wants to rekindle those old friendships. You know how it is when you spend so much time with someone, and you come back and feel like you've changed, that the dynamics have shifted. I listened to his words, but they didn't quite make sense to me. It wasn't about not understanding what Sam was going through. Of course, I understood that. But what about me? Hadn't I been part of his life? Hadn't we shared so many memories growing up together? Why did it feel like that no longer mattered? But I've been part of Sam's life too, Dad, I said, my voice shaky now. I've been here, waiting for him to come back. I've missed him so much, and I thought when he came home, it would be a big family thing. A reunion for all of us, not just his friends. I heard my dad exhale slowly, and then he spoke again, his tone softer this time. I get it. I really do. But you have to understand that Sam's experience has been different. When he left for college, he was still figuring himself out. And then he went overseas for that job, and things changed. He's not the same person he was when he left. You're not the same person either. His words stung, but I knew there was truth in them. I had changed. I wasn't the same person I had been 3 years ago, either. But I hadn't expected Sam to change so much that he would forget about me. He was still my brother, and I was still his sister. Shouldn't that count for something? I just don't understand, I said, my frustration bubbling up. I thought family was supposed to come first. I thought that no matter how much time passed, we'd always be there for each other. Why does it feel like I don't even matter anymore? I could hear my dad sigh again, and there was a long moment of silence before he responded. Sweetheart, it's not that you don't matter. You'll always matter to Sam. But he's in a different place now. He's not thinking about things the way you are. He's been away for so long, and when you come back from something like that, you can't just pick up where you left off. It's not that simple. People change. I know it's hard to accept, but you've got to give him space to figure out what he needs. I was silent, my mind reeling from his words. Space? Was that what he needed? Was I supposed to just stand by and wait for him to decide when I was worthy of his time again? It didn't seem fair. I just feel like I'm not part of it anymore, I said quietly, the weight of the words sinking in. I've been here all this time, and now it feels like Sam has a whole new life that doesn't include me. I don't know how to deal with that. My dad's voice softened even further. I know it's tough, but you have to trust that Sam loves you. This isn't about you. It's about him trying to navigate his own path after being away for so long. He's just trying to find his place in the world again. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside me. My dad was right about one thing. Sam had been away for a long time. He had experienced things I couldn't even begin to understand. But that didn't make it easier to accept the growing distance between us. It didn't make it easier to accept that I wasn't the person he needed to reconnect with first. I guess I just feel left out. I admitted, my voice small now. Like I'm not important anymore. You are important, more than you know, my dad said, his voice warm and reassuring. But sometimes, people need different things. It's not a reflection of how much they care about you. It's just a part of growing up, and it's a part of life. I know it's hard to accept, but you need to give Sam the time he needs. And when he's ready, you'll be right there, just like always. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse, but I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I guess I understand, I said, though it didn't feel like I did. It wasn't about understanding. It was about accepting something that I wasn't ready to face. I know it's not easy, my dad continued, but I promise you, you haven't lost Sam. You just have to let him figure things out in his own time. And when he's ready, he'll come back to you. I wasn't sure how much comfort I found in those words, but at least it was something. At least it was an explanation, even if it wasn't what I had hoped for. I had to accept that things had changed. Sam wasn't the same person he was when he left, and I wasn't either. We were both in different places now, and maybe that was okay. Thanks, Dad, I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. I just needed to talk about it. I'm always here for you, he replied. Don't ever forget that. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me still felt angry, frustrated, and hurt. But another part of me understood what my dad had said. Sam wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just trying to find his way back home in his own way. And maybe, in time, he would realize that I was still here, waiting for him to come back into my life. Until then, I would have to be patient. It wasn't easy, but I had no other choice. The conversation with my dad hadn't given me all the answers I wanted, but it had given me a bit of perspective. I had to let go of my expectations and accept that the reunion wouldn't look the way I had imagined. Sam's homecoming was his, and it wasn't going to revolve around me. But I would be there when he was ready. I had to believe that. The hours leading up to Sam's party passed slowly, each minute dragging on as I sat in my room, mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. I had always prided myself on being level-headed, on not letting small things get under my skin. But this was different. This wasn't just a small misunderstanding or a minor slight. It felt like the very fabric of our relationship had been stretched so thin that it might snap. I tried to push the feeling aside, to tell myself that it wasn't a big deal, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I wasn't just upset about not being invited. I was hurt by the fact that Sam, my brother, the person who had been my closest companion for so many years, seemed to have moved on without me. I had spent hours trying to shake the feeling, trying to convince myself that this was just a temporary thing. Maybe Sam didn't even realize how much it would hurt me to be left out. Maybe he didn't mean to make me feel like I was unimportant. But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself of that, it didn't change the fact that it still hurt. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about how much I had missed him, how much I had hoped that his return would mean that we could pick up where we left off. But that wasn't happening, and it wasn't going to happen. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm golden glow through the window of my room. The evening air was crisp, the kind of cool that made you want to pull a sweater over your shoulders. I could hear the sound of my parents downstairs, still bustling around, getting ready for the party. The distant murmur of voices and the clinking of glasses drifted up through the house, a reminder of the celebration that was unfolding without me. I should have been there, with them, celebrating Sam's return. But instead, I felt like an outsider, someone who had been left behind. I stood up and walked over to the window, my fingers lightly tracing the edges of the glass as I looked out into the street. The houses across the way were lit up with porch lights, the faint hum of conversation spilling out from open windows. Life seemed to continue on around me, as though everything was normal, as though nothing had changed. But I knew it had. I knew that something had shifted, and I couldn't ignore it. I looked down at my phone again, half hoping that Sam had sent me a message, maybe a simple apology or an invitation to join in. But there was nothing, not a single word from him since that brief exchange earlier. Part of me knew I shouldn't be waiting for a message. After all, I had already spoken to him. He had explained things, hadn't he? He was reconnecting with his college friends. He was rebuilding his life, and I was supposed to accept that. But another part of me, the part that was still clinging to the idea of the family I once knew, couldn't help but hope that things would be different, that Sam would remember the bond we shared and want to include me. But hope, as I had learned all too well, could be a double-edged sword. I heard the front door open downstairs, followed by the sound of footsteps. I couldn't see who it was, but I didn't need to guess. It was Sam. His return had been the topic of conversation for weeks now. His name had come up at dinner, in texts, in passing remarks about the house being prepared for his homecoming. My parents had been so excited, so eager to make everything perfect for him. And I had been excited too, excited in my own way, but also anxious. Anxious about what it would mean to have him home again. Anxious about how much things had changed in the time he had been away. I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest as I heard his voice, muffled but unmistakable, carried up from the staircase. His laugh was familiar, that warm, easygoing laugh that had always made me feel safe. And yet, tonight, it sounded distant. It sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone I didn't know as well anymore. I shook my head, trying to clear the thought away. Maybe I was just overthinking things again. Maybe I had let my emotions get the best of me. I couldn't help it, though. I had spent so many years thinking that no matter what happened, Sam and I would always be close. But in the months leading up to his return, I had begun to realize that maybe that wasn't true. Maybe we weren't the same people anymore. And that thought hurt more than I was willing to admit. I sat down on my bed and picked up my phone once more. This time, I didn't try to rationalize it. I didn't try to tell myself that Sam would come around or that he didn't mean to hurt me. Instead, I typed down a message. Hey Sam, I know you're busy with your friends, but I just wanted to say I'm here when you're ready to catch up. I really missed you. It was simple, straightforward, and in some ways it felt like giving into the fact that things had changed. But I sent it anyway. I needed him to know that I was still here, that I hadn't given up on him, even if it felt like he had moved on from me. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling longer than the last. I kept my phone in my hand, waiting for a response. But as time wore on, it became more and more apparent that my message wasn't going to be answered anytime soon. It wasn't the first time I'd sent a text like this, but it was the first time I had truly realized how much I was reaching out, how much I was hoping for something that might never come. The realization hit me hard. Sam wasn't coming back the way I wanted him to. He wasn't going to return to the family dynamic we had once had. He had grown up. He had experienced things I couldn't understand, and he was looking for a different kind of connection. I wasn't sure if I was ready to accept that, but the truth was undeniable. The person I had known, the person I had shared so many memories with, was no longer the same. And I wasn't either. I stood up, feeling the weight of the thought settling over me like a heavy blanket. I walked over to my dresser and pulled out a sweater, the one I had worn so many times when Sam was around. It still smelled faintly of him, of his cologne and the memories of afternoons spent together, just the two of us. But even that smell felt distant now, like a memory I was struggling to hold on to. I had hoped that his return would heal whatever gaps had formed between us during his absence. I had hoped that we could just pick up where we left off. But now, I realized that wasn't going to happen. Sam had his own life, his own journey, and I had mine. We were no longer the two siblings who could spend hours talking about nothing, who would finish each other's sentences, who knew each other's thoughts without saying a word. We had both changed, and maybe, just maybe, that was okay. I walked over to the window again, this time looking out into the night. The stars above were clear and bright, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always something beautiful to hold on to. And maybe that was the lesson I needed to learn, that change was inevitable, that people grew, and that sometimes relationships evolve in ways you didn't expect. I thought about the text I'd sent, the one that had gone unanswered. It didn't matter. I wasn't reaching out to get something back. I was reaching out because I needed to. I needed Sam to know that I was here, that I still cared, whether he responded or not. I had to let go of the expectation that things would go back to how they were before. I had to stop holding on to the version of Sam that I remembered, the version that I thought I could always rely on. As I stood there, gazing out into the night, I realized that my relationship with Sam was never going to be the same. It was bittersweet, but it was also a part of life. People changed. I had changed. He had changed. And maybe, just maybe, that change was the beginning of something new. Something that, in time, would bring us back together in a different way. It might not be the way I had imagined, but it would be ours. And maybe that was enough. I turned away from the window and sat back down on my bed. For the first time in hours, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't the kind of peace that came with everything being perfect. It was the kind that came with accepting the truth, however painful it might be, and learning to move forward with it. I wasn't ready to completely let go, but maybe I didn't have to. Maybe I could just let things be. And in time, they would fall into place. The day after the party, I woke up to an emptier house than usual. It was quiet, but it wasn't the comfortable kind of silence. It was the kind of quiet that felt heavy, filled with unspoken words and unfinished conversations. The kind of quiet that made me feel more alone than I had in a long time. Sam's absence was palpable, even though he had been home just the night before. It was as if he had never left. The house, the rooms, the furniture all felt like they had been waiting for him to return, but now that he was here, It was as if something was still missing. I couldn't stop thinking about the previous night, about the party that I hadn't been invited to, about the way Sam had seemed to glide through the house, surrounded by old friends and laughter, while I remained on the periphery, left out of the moment. I knew it wasn't intentional, but it didn't stop the feeling from festering inside me. It didn't stop me from wondering if I had become someone who no longer fit into his life, someone who had been left behind in the wake of his transformation. But as I sat on the edge of my bed that morning, something inside me shifted. It wasn't the realization that everything was okay or that everything would magically fix itself. It was a quiet understanding, a kind of acceptance that I wasn't sure I was ready for. But I had to be. I had no choice. I walked downstairs, still in my pajamas, my hair a mess from a restless night. The kitchen was empty, the remnants of last night's celebration cleared away. My parents were nowhere to be found. The house felt still, like a place frozen in time, waiting for something to happen. I made myself a cup of coffee, the warm steam filling the space around me. As I sipped it, my mind wandered back to the conversation I had had with my dad the night before, the one that had left me feeling both comforted and confused. "You have to give Sam space," my dad had said. "He's figuring things out in his own way." It made sense. It did. But it also felt like a cruel reality that I wasn't ready to accept. Sam was my brother. He was supposed to be the one who always had my back, the one who I could count on no matter what. But now, it seemed like I was the one who needed to adjust, the one who had to accept that things had changed, even if I didn't want them to. I set the coffee mug down on the kitchen counter and stared out the window. The sun was just beginning to climb higher in the sky, casting a soft light across the lawn. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized that maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Change wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to let go of the idea of the Sam I had once known and embrace the version of him who had returned home, someone who had lived a life that I didn't fully understand, someone who was different in ways I couldn't change. Just as I was about to turn away from the window, I heard the front door open. I froze for a moment, my heart quickening. It was Sam. He was home. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to retreat back into the comfort of my room, to stay away from him until I could figure out how to navigate this new reality. But another part of me, the part that had missed him so much, the part that still cared deeply for him, knew that I couldn't hide forever. I couldn't let fear or pride keep me from reaching out, not when it mattered the most. I took a deep breath and walked toward the front door. As I reached the living room, I saw him standing there, his back to me as he removed his jacket. He looked so much older now, more mature, and yet in some ways he still looked like the same Sam I had known growing up. But that was the thing. He wasn't the same person, and I wasn't either. He turned around, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in what felt like ages. A slight smile crossed his face, but there was something guarded about it, something unsure. "Hey," he said quietly, his voice still familiar, but with an edge of hesitation. "Hey," I replied, my voice a little more shaky than I intended. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. "I was just thinking about you." Sam raised an eyebrow, his expression softening. "Oh yeah? What about?" I took a step closer to him, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment where I could finally say everything that had been building up inside of me. But instead of speaking the words I planned, I simply let out a small laugh, a nervous, almost embarrassed sound. "I don't really know what to say," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I guess. I've just missed you. A lot." Sam didn't say anything right away, but I could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes, the softening of his stance. He stepped closer to me, his hands in his pockets. "I missed you too," he said, his voice a little more sincere now. "I know it probably doesn't seem like it, but I have." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in my chest. For the first time in days, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe things weren't as broken as I thought. Maybe there was still a way forward for us, even if it was different from what I had expected. "I just don't know how to fit into your life anymore," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You've changed, and I don't know if I've changed in a way that you can still understand." Sam sighed deeply, and for a moment, He looked like he was searching for the right words. I get it. I really do, he said, his eyes softening as he looked at me. I've been gone for so long, and when I came back, I think I was just overwhelmed. Everything felt different, and I didn't really know how to come back to the people who used to be so close to me. But you still want to, right? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. You still want to be close to me? Sam hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting to the ground before meeting mine again. I do, he said, his voice firming with sincerity. I think I needed time to process everything, to figure out where I fit in this new version of myself. I get that, I replied, my chest tight. I don't want to feel like I'm not part of your life anymore. You're my brother, Sam, and no matter how much time has passed or how much we've both changed, that doesn't change. It can't. He stepped forward, closing the distance between us. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low and full of regret. I should have made more of an effort. I should have made you feel like you were still important to me. You don't have to apologize, I said quickly, my throat tightening. I get it. Things are different now, and that's okay. I just want us to be able to find our way back to each other. Sam nodded, his expression serious but tender. We will, he said. It might take some time, but we'll figure it out. I don't want to lose you. Not again. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the weight in my chest lift. It wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't the ideal reunion I had imagined. But it was real, and it was something we could work with. Sam wasn't the same person I had known before, and I wasn't the same person either. But that didn't mean we couldn't find a way to build something new. A relationship that would work for both of us, despite the changes and the distance. We stood there for a moment, in the quiet of the living room, the air between us filled with unspoken understanding. Things weren't perfect, and they might never be. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. I missed you too, Sam, I said, my voice soft but steady. And I'm glad you're home. Sam smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached his eyes. I'm glad to be home, he said, and I'm glad we're talking. It's a start. I nodded, feeling the first glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something from the ashes of what had been left behind. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were in it together. And that was enough for now. As we stood there, talking and laughing, I realized something important. Sometimes the hardest moments in life were the ones that made us stronger. Sometimes the wounds that seemed impossible to heal were the ones that taught us how to be more compassionate, how to understand each other better. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Sam and I needed. To heal, to grow, and to move forward together.